Hello, welcome to another up close video. Today's one is looking at Stamp Club number 3 from Tonic, and it is called Happy Hibiscus, and it's got this stunning large background stamp in it. But it's a really clever design because they've made it so that you can use it as a background, you can use it, the middle section, as like a focal element, or you can use the outside of it as a frame as well. And I'll go through more of how that works with all of the dies as well, because you might be thinking the coordinating die set looks a bit peculiar with all these like jaggedy shapes and stuff, but it's really clever the way they've designed it. The only thing about the coordinating dies this month, because of all of the little jaggedy bits, you know, that sort of cut around the pointy leaves and stuff, it's slightly harder to line the dies up perfectly. With the previous months, it's been very kind of basic sort of curved shapes and stuff, so it's been really easy to line the die up over the top of your stamped image and you can still actually see the stamped design, and then you can get the perfect cutting. With this month's one, it's just slightly harder to be able to line up the die. I was just winging it for all of my ones, but I do kind of wish I'd put the effort in and actually made myself like a little template guide to be able to line the die up into, so that I would know that I was getting it to cut out perfectly. But I'll show you that later on, how you can do the template guide to get it to be perfect, or you can do the method that I've shown you multiple times, especially with this heart one and the interior one. It might not work so well with the borders or doing the frame, but where you would stamp your image, then you would take the negative of the die cut and line it up around the image using like a stamping platform, and then because you've lined that up around it perfectly, you can then just place in multiples of the die cuts and keep stamping on them, and they'll have like the perfect position. And I've shown you that in a previous video. I cannot remember what video, but I'm sure I've shown it a few different times of exactly how you can line it up like that. But I will show you the other way later on in the video of how to kind of line up the dies to get a perfect impression, or a perfect white border around the edge. So I have made 2 cards already that I filmed an up close video for. However, the builders next door were being really noisy when I wanted to film the talking portion of like showing you that card, or those 2 cards. So I'll insert that bit of footage later on in the video, but I'll just put music over it because I didn't actually talk while I was showing them, but I wanted to get some video footage to go in this video. But there will be a sped up video of making those 2 cards as well. And I've got multiple other examples that I was just playing with to show you too. So let's actually look at the stamp set. So this is the Happy Hibiscus stamp set, and it's this beautiful design. Which packaging is it? It is the stamp set packaging. You might have noticed on the previous 2 months, you might have seen this card on the back of your packaging, and it is this beautiful stamp that we're now getting in this month's Stamp Club, which is brilliant. So mine's a bit dirty, so it's a little bit offset on the backing image, but you can see how gorgeous of a design this is. It works perfectly as an overall background, and it actually measures 5 3/4 inches by 4.5, so it's slightly bigger than an A2 kind of a card, so it would fit really nicely on an A2, but you'd lose the very outside edges. Or you can mount this up onto a 5x7 card quite nicely. Maybe you want to trim off a bit of the card blank so it fits nicer. Or you can easily get it onto an A6 card as well, because yeah, they've made it so the height will be really great for an A6 card. You would just lose a little bit of the width, because an A6 card is like, I don't know, 7mm shorter than this, so it will go perfectly for A6 and A2 cards, or bigger cards, or smaller cards, if you're just using portions of it as well. So it's really versatile. And once you've stamped out this whole design, it's really nice just to cut random portions of it up as well, not necessarily thinking of it as a focal image and a frame around the edge, just cutting random bits out of it. And I'll show you a card that I've done with that too. And again, if you're cutting a random bit out of it, you're still left with the rest of it, which you can then use as like a different kind of frame, not necessarily cutting out the floral-y kind of image from the middle, but just cutting a square out, and then you get an instant kind of frame for your card as well, and it looks really good. So yeah, this is beautiful, this background. You've got these gorgeous like monstera or like cheese plant leaves, these gorgeous more like palms and stuff coming out, bigger kind of leaves. Again, they're all kind of repeated around, so it ties in really nicely. And then flower-wise, you've got obviously hibiscuses, hence the name of the set. You've got these kind of flowers as well, with kind of like a curved petal coming over them. You've got these sort of more like trumpety flowers, or they could be sort of bells hanging downwards. And then in the centre, you've even got a calla lily in here too. And I guess this one could be like a calla lily too. And you've got other hibiscuses and different other flowers, so it's a really nice variety of designs in here. And then, as well as having this beautiful large version of this gorgeous hibiscus design, you've also got one where they've made some of the elements into a heart, which is really lovely, and you've got a larger kind of calla lily there, and a hibiscus and a cheese plant leaf, and you know, gorgeous little florals with their foliage and stuff all in there. So this makes a really nice small element on a card. You could do 3 of them. I did 5 of them cascading down a DL card, which is one of the ones that I did in the sped up video as well, and that looks really nice. And then you also get these 2, which I didn't actually end up using, but they're beautiful like little extra border dies, or you could kind of stamp and trim out or die cut these out maybe 4 times and use them with one of the squares that come in the add-on die set or in the coordinating die set, and you could even like tuck them coming out from underneath the aperture, or you could just create your own kind of aperture. You could add them to just any square die cut that you've got and give yourself a kind of square frame in a smaller scale as well. And then sentiment wise, you've got I love you, thanks, congratulations, it's your day, you make my heart happy, I'm so grateful for you, you're amazing, friend, and love. So a nice sort of mixture of different words that would work, the small font with the CRaFTi font, but also mixing and matching your dies in as well. And speaking of sentiment kind of dies, in the coordinating die set, you are also getting a couple of sentiment dies, which is really nice. You get this lovely like tiered happy birthday, so the happy is above the birthday, and it's a really nice scripty swirly kind of font, which you'll see on some of my cards. And you also get the extra bubble to go around it too, so you can either use this for backing the sentiment with vellum or card to be able to sort of raise it up or blur the background, but you can also do other fun techniques with it that I'll show you on one of my cards. You can make it into a shaker card, but there's also like a simple way of using it too that I'll show you. And then similar idea with the for you as well, but the for you is really nice actually, because the words are separate. So I mean, they're on the same die but they fall away separately, and you can mount them like this, or they actually nestle into each other really nicely above and below each other, or side by side but in a different kind of configuration as well, which is really nice. Then as kind of like extra dies, like last month we had the grass and the clouds as like the extra dies in the set. You've actually got 2 sets of nesting double stitched dies, so it's the ones that have the cutting edge running down the centre and stitches on both sides, so you can use them for an aperture or just to cut a shape out as well, and you get that beautiful stitching on both sides. The longer ones you could use in conjunction with some of your sentiments if you want, or the square ones. I actually use the square ones to create an aperture or like an extra little piece for one of my cards. So I had this whole background stamped out, and then I literally just took that square die, cut a bit of it out, and then use that square on a card. And you could even, you know, get like at least 4 out of that design to go on your cards as well. You could even do more of like a patchwork effect and like cut this up with different sizes of squares and do a really fun contemporary look down a card, maybe having like a large square cut out and then a couple of smaller ones as well, all patched back onto the card, and maybe a couple of the tiny ones too, but keeping them in the same pattern. Maybe even, I'm giving myself more ideas now, but maybe even stamping the entire background in a light grey colour, and then taking a second one, colouring it in, die cutting it like this, and placing them back on top of the grey one with 3D foam and stuff to give a different kind of a look. It would really make this stamp set look really different as well. So there's lots of different ways of using all of these little nesting dies that you get in here, and they're also just really useful kind of dies to have as well. And I think even if you're not going to use these in conjunction with like cutting the stamp up, just using these to create a background is really nice as well. Donkeys years ago, when I don't know if I had a die cutting machine then or not, but or I might have just, yeah, I might have just cut them out of card, I can't remember, but I did a kind of patchwork background where I had loads of different squares and I lined them all up, and then I just drew faux stitching across, or like crosses or just running stitches, and it kind of looked like a crazy patchwork quilt as well. So these kind of squares are brilliant for that sort of idea. And you can do the same thing with all of the rectangles too. Then dies that actually coordinate with all of the stamps is all of the ones that are left. So you get a few obvious kind of dies. So you get this one, which cuts the heart out. And I, on one of the cards that is going to be in the sped up clip just with music over the top, or there'll be a sped up video, I actually used this heart die to cut an aperture in the front of the card, and then I had the heart stamped inside the card so you could see it through the window as well, which I think is always a really lovely way to use stamps that have coordinating dies, because it's kind of difficult to do that sort of thing if you don't have a coordinating die for a stamp. It's quite hard to, you know, cut the intricate design out of the front of your card and still make it look neat. Then you've also got these two little dies which cut out the two little borders that you've got. Which one's which? I think that's that one. Yeah. And you've got that one too. I think these, no, they're going to be a little bit tricky as well. I think you might need a you know, a template kind of one cut to be able to do this, to be able to cut all of these easily. I was winging it, especially with these hearts, because I was cutting like 5 of them out, and it is possible to do, but if you want them to be absolutely perfect, then stay tuned to the end of the video and I'll show you how to cut your own like pieces that you can just keep with your stamp and die sets, and it'll just help you be able to instantly, quickly cut them out absolutely perfectly without any hassle. So you've got those dies. I can never remember where they all go on the sheet. I've put these back on here a few times, and you know, they're still sort of hanging over the acetate. And then the clever part of this stamp and die set is what I was saying earlier, that it's actually a frame with a central piece inside it. So you get the die to cut this central portion out, and it goes that way, and you can see what I mean about it's not as easy to line it up because of all of these fine details like here, and obviously with a die, to make it last over time, you need to, I don't know, make it more stable by having larger, flatter areas of metal to hold all the little ridges in the right place. So it makes it harder to line it up just, you know, by stamping the image and lining it over it. I did manage to do it. It wasn't perfect, but I did manage to do it. If you line up in a few different places, you can kind of figure it out after a little bit of trial and error, but I do have a trick for making it absolutely perfect to do. And so as well as getting the actual die, and you can get both of them out of this, so you can cut the border and the central piece out of this, so you can stamp this once but get 2 pieces, and it works. You know, there's actually enough space to cut both of them out, which is brilliant, because it means you're never going to waste the frame or the inside. You're going to have both. But if you cut this one out, then the frame looks a bit peculiar, because, you know, you've just kind of cut that topper out of the middle. But so you also get the die to cut the actual frame out as well. Go this way, yeah. So you can actually, it cuts really nicely up to the edges, gives a tiny little white border, which looks really nice, and will cut you out the frame design as well. So just to show you that, I've got a card that I've started and I haven't decided how I'm going to finish it yet, but it shows you this kind of, you know, the concept. So that is the frame. This was a jelly printed background, and I'd actually, I was using mostly Arteza acrylic paints, but I'd also put some of the Tonic Radiant Gold gilding flakes on my jelly plate as well, and picked them up too. And this pattern you're seeing in the background, this floral design, I can show you a bit more of it here. This was actually a handmade cotton paper from Tonic, and I pressed it into the paint that was on my jelly plate and let it dry, and then put another layer over it and pulled it off. So that's how I've got that cool florally design in the background there. But I just waited until that background was completely dry, and then I just heat embossed the whole big stamp, and then I could use that die to cut out the frame, and this was just me eyeballing it. So it is possible to just eyeball it. It's not 100% perfect all the way around. There are some places where the gap is slightly bigger and other places where it's slightly smaller, or, you know, like right up to the white. But it is possible to eyeball it, and I did eyeball the middle one as well. And you can see how I got both of them, whichever way round it goes, I got both of them out of there. There is just enough space in that stamp design to be able to use both dies. You do have to do them separately, but you can actually get the centerpiece out as well. And you can see it's slightly off, like there's a slightly bigger gap here and stuff, but this was just eyeballing it. So it is possible to fiddle around and actually not have to use a template to get it to cut properly. But I just wanted to show you. I know that doesn't, I don't know if it really shows the gorgeous detail that's in there. The two cards that are sped up later on, I keep saying it, but I properly coloured those ones in so that you can really tell what flowers are in there. So that is just like showing the sort of the frame and the inside piece. I think for this one I'm going to get a bigger Tonic sentiment die and try and like fill that aperture with the sentiment, and I might even come back in and like add a little bit of transparent kind of colouring over the top of some of these leaves to make them stand out a little bit more. I'm not sure yet, but that one's kind of like a work in progress. And then I have done all of these ones. These were just like, some were backgrounds that I just had lying around. Like I had these two backgrounds. This one didn't turn out as nicely as I wanted because I think the matte paint in the background kind of took away some of the stickiness of the clear ink that I was using, and I was also fiddling around with trying to sprinkle on some of the glimmering green embossing powder and then coming on with the pearled pistachio, and I think I took too long and some of the ink had dried, but it gives quite a nice patchy kind of effect with a little bit of sparkle on there. And then this is what I was saying about a kind of simple way to use the word die and the bubble together. So you just stick both of them inside each other and cut them from the panel, and then you just have this piece and all the bits in between the words that comes away, and you know, then you can just stick one back inside the other. But you can also make that a shaker behind there, or if you don't want to have the fiddliness of sticking the sentiment down, you can put double-sided adhesive sheet behind there, stick the sentiment on, and then put glitter on it as well for another look. But I really like the simplicity of that card. And then, because that one didn't quite heat emboss as I wanted it to, I then did this one. So this was just using some matte chalky paints and doing some brush strokes on there. And then this is the pearled pistachio Nuvo powder on there all over, which I think looks really nice. Because this is a mica-y kind of powder, it's kind of a little bit transparent, so it actually shows up looking darker on the darker colours underneath it and lighter where it's on the white. I don't know if it's that evident on the camera, but in person you can see that it's showing a different kind of mica reflection on the darker areas. So that's those two, just really simple cards, you know, just using the background with a simple die cut word, whether it's one of the ones that comes in the coordinating die set or whether it's a different one that you have, and then using some of the word stamps from the set as well. Then I did this little one, which I really like how it turned out. If you watched my up close video, or there was also a sped up video from when the rustic rose was in the Tonic craft kit, I did a trio of cards where I scraped through a stencil with the with one of the Dream Drops, the newest Dream Drop that came out in the Rustic Rose colour trend, and I sprinkled in some confetti. And when I was doing that video, I was trying to get ahead and have a background already dried, so this was the one that I actually did in the video and then I left to dry. But this is that gorgeous background that was left, and it's been sitting on my desk, and I've wanted an excuse to use it and turn it into a card, and I thought this would go perfectly. So this is just a random square out of that background, and doesn't it look so cool, just cutting a random square out using one of the stitch squares that comes in the coordinating die set, and then that's just heat embossed onto vellum as well. And then I've just done I'm so grateful. This sentiment actually says I'm so grateful for you, but I just heat embossed the I'm so grateful and then used the die cut for you and mixed it kind of together, and I think that just looks so nice. It's just really simple card, but really effective, and as I was saying earlier, you could get at least 4 of them out of just one stamping of that, or you can strategically place your square and cut it out of it and then use the actual sort of framed element for another card. So this is the gold embossing on vellum. It's not really picking up the metallic of the embossing. And then the background here was actually, again, I was playing with some paints. It was pink and purple paints that I just sort of brushed onto a background. And then I've used some of the old leather armchair cotton paper from Craft Perfect. And then I just added the For You sentiment on there as well. That does look better in real life, but it's not really catching the... oh, there it is. It's catching the metallic now. It looks a bit better when the metallic is shining. So that is using like both portions of that. I thought it'd be nice to show you both. And then finally the last one I did was actually just keeping them in black and white. And you might notice that this flower is actually from the first Stamp Club. So the Heartfelt Corsage that came out as the first ever Stamp Club stamp set, I was using this flower. So I've got a couple of those flowers hidden here, and then I've also got in there the heart. So this was the heart from the new stamp set, plus this little hibiscus flower, which is from this portion here. So this central design, I just snipped that little flower out, and then to make it look like the others, I just used a white pen to hide any of the little black lines, because obviously I just cut around that by hand. And it had little black lines from where the stamp sort of carried on, but just clustering them all together. And I'd done a really bright background with some acrylic paints, and so I thought just leaving them in black and white, it looks really nice. They just work really nicely on there. And I have also used a little bit of a gold sparkly gel pen. Wow, that's really difficult to pick up on camera. I don't know if you're even going to be able to see that. Oh, there we go. Tiny bit of a sparkle, maybe you can see. Just really subtle, just so it wasn't completely just black on white. But I really like how that looks. And again, you can mix that with any sentiment. It doesn't have to be the ones from the stamp set too. I could have mixed it with some of the Heartfelt Corsage sentiments too. But I think that turned out really nice. So I hope you liked these cards, and I'll insert the footage of the other 2 cards that I made. It will just be sped up to music though. And I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so I hope you liked those 2 cards too, and keep your eyes peeled for the sped up video, which should be out tomorrow, using those, making those 2 cards. And then I've just die cut these to show you how to make this kind of like template for you to get the perfect positioning of your dies with hardly any effort at all. And you don't just have to use this for these 2, I just thought I would show you for these 2, but you can also use it for the heart and the borders. For the other stamps as well. So I've just cut them both just into a piece of scrap card, and then I'm going to take this, cut it in half, and you actually want the I'd say kind of the bit you're not thinking about. So you would think you would want to save this piece, but actually to get the die lined up perfectly, you want this piece. I'm sorry if the lighting's really bad as well. It's a bit dark at the moment. But anyway, you want this piece, and this is the interior portion of that design. So you want to keep that for cutting that one out. Obviously, if you did this from white cardstock or whatever, well, I mean, you can stamp on this one too, actually. Then you could actually just stamp the design onto there too. And then for this one, you actually want to keep the interior piece. So this is for getting the frame to be cut out perfectly. You'd think you would want to keep the frame piece, but no, you actually want to keep this interior piece to be able to get your die to line up perfectly. So if I just show you on the actual stamp rather than me stamping one out. So if you wanted, say this is your stamped image, if you wanted to die cut this one out absolutely perfectly with no hassle, not having to worry about it being lined up and stuff, or like not having to worry too much about it being lined up and not being able to get the die, because if you look at the die, I did kind of show this earlier, but if you look at the die, it's cutting off a lot of this detail here. Usually, well, with the last couple of months, because they've been simpler shapes, you've been able to see the stamp design inside the metal of the die, and you've been able to get it lined up perfectly. But because of the nature of this stamp and the detail that's needed in the die, you can't do that because there's too much being covered by the metal to know exactly where you're placing it. So you take your negative piece and you would line it up onto your stamped image on your piece of cardstock. You can spend as long as you like getting it lined up perfectly. So you've got that even border all the way around. Then what you would do is you would tape that in place, so onto the actual image that you want to die cut. Then you would just take your die and you would slot it so you can't feel it moving anymore. Then you would tape that in place and then run that through your die cutting machine, and you'll get the perfect die cut out of it. Or the technique I was trying to explain about stamping straight onto your die cut, pretend that stamped image is one that I've put the stamp on the lid of my stamping platform, I've put scrap paper in the stamping platform, and I've stamped it, and that is that image. Then you would take this piece and you line it up around it perfectly like this, tape it in place, and then all you have to do is keep your stamp in the same place on the stamping platform, and then all you do is nestle that die cut back in, and then ink your stamp up, stamp it in, it'll be perfect. Take this one out, put another one in, and then ink it up and stamp it, and it'll be perfect. So that's how you can do that kind of way as well, if that's easier for you. And then the same thing applies for trying to do the frame for this as well. So we actually want to keep the inside portion for this one. And again, say this is my actual stamped image that I want to die cut, then you would just take this piece that is the interior from the die cut, and again we're just perfectly going to line it up. So you want to line it up all the way around, checking that all the pieces are nicely nestling into the design, and you would stamp that, or you would stick that in place. Then you would take the coordinating die and you just you can see how it kind of moves and then locks into place. And then you would know that's in the perfect position. You tape that down and you run it all through your die cutting machine, and then you'd have the perfect die cut frame as well. So I'm hoping that helped anybody who finds it difficult to line them up. I mean, with the previous two it has been easy to do, but with this one it is harder because of the intricacy of the dies and how much metal is needed around those little intricate bits. But doing it that way, you should get the perfect die cuts every time. So I hope that was helpful for you. And so we were using the inside piece of this one, the outside piece of this one, put those together, keep them with your die set or with the stamp set, and then you've got them for whenever you want to die cut them. You can use this over and over again. It doesn't matter if it gets a little bit flat in the die cutting sandwich as you're die cutting it. You can still keep using it. Obviously if you accidentally rip it or it's starting to get misshapen or bits are like curled up and stuff, you'd want to cut another one. But every time you cut this, you're going to have another one anyway, really, because usually for this middle piece, you're going to want the middle piece, so every time you cut one, you're going to have the outside piece left over, so you know you can always just keep your scrap each time, so you know that you've got it and everything. But yeah, so hopefully that was helpful for you, and I hope you enjoyed this up close video, seeing all the different samples. This video has had a lot of samples in compared to some of my usual ones. I don't usually get a chance to make this many, but I was having a lot of fun just playing. And I really like this design, and I think it's so lovely and versatile. So I hope you enjoyed this up close video, and thank you so much for watching. Don't forget, if you want to get hold of the Stamp Club stamp set and die set, there isn't an extra die set or stamp set this month, I didn't say that before, it's just this stamp set and the coordinating die set. But if you want to get hold of them, they're in a bundle together. I think it's $34.99 for the both of them together, and the links will be below the video as well. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again in the next video. Bye!